Hey everyone, welcome to Garage Talk. As always, I'm Conrad. Let's go.
I'm Ted. It's time to rock and roll. Part 1 today.
Part 1. Hey Teddy, today we got a couple of guests with us.
I'm Dallas Street, lifetime citizen of Grant County. Spent some time in the active duty Army, moved back home with my wife and kids, and currently live outside of Van Buren.
I'm Kale Grindle, also lifetime resident of Grant County. I am a small farmer and an engineer.
Sweet. Thanks, guys. The people love you already. So, talk to us about this story you have. Share with us all the information, well, as much as we can fit in an hour.
So I think for me, it started in December. My neighbors were telling me for months and months, hey, there's a solar threat of industrial solar coming to Grant County. And I think like many citizens, I got a busy life. I got 3 kids. They're all very, very active. And so as a citizen, I just thought my government will take care of me. They'll look out for me. Surely everyone knows, the pitfalls of this industrial green energy type stuff. And it wasn't until about December of this past year when it got incredibly real. And there was kind of a call to action in the rural community for as many people as possible to attend an area plan commission meeting and voice their discomfort. So I did that, and while I was at this meeting, I met up with Kale and a group of younger guys that we all went to school together, actually. And during this meeting, there was one of the commissioners has to sit on the area plan, and while all these citizens came up, were expressing their discomfort and their concern with the entire idea of a solar ordinance that was friendly to the solar companies and not so friendly to the rural citizens. Just the look on his face and the way he sat back, kind of with a smile, like nothing we said mattered. I'm just here because I have to be. Mm-hmm. That got me incredibly fired up as a citizen. Again, zero interest in politics locally, but you don't do that to people when they take time out of their evening. So I stood up, I made a statement, and I committed to seeing this through until the rural citizens of the county had their voices heard, and we still don't feel like we are yet. So that's where my involvement is. Kale?
Yeah, as a farmer, I knew this was coming, 2 years ago, but it never got real until December last year, when a couple, the people who founded our movement, the Grant County Citizens for Responsible Solar Facebook page, and a shameless plug right here.
Go ahead, plug it.
Solar on farmground.com. A few members of our group took the time to search the records office to find leases. And they took that information and put them on a plat map. And highlighted, dozens and dozens of properties that have been signed up for solar. And they mailed out these letters with these maps on it to every neighbor that could possibly be affected. And that just started it all right there. So, yes, I knew it was coming. I didn't really give it a whole lot of thought. But once I knew it was coming right next door to me, it's like, it's time to get started. As a beginning farmer myself, it's impossible anyways just to pick up ground, but if we're going to be losing 5,000-6,000 acres, it's just going to get worse. So, I've got to do something. My family, we've had my property for 172 years now, and I've got a little 3-year-old. I'm like, if there's a solar farm next door, he's not going to want to stick around. He's the 9th generation. Yeah, he ain't going to want to stick around. So we got, that's what got me involved.
So, where do these solar companies come from? It's not right here in our county.
It's not even in our state. GeneX is from North Carolina.
North Carolina.
Okay.
Where is Apex from? I don't know that I've ever seen where they're from.
I'm not sure.
But they're not local by any means.
Right. Okay. They're just coming in and they're throwing this out there and say, hey, you give us this farm ground, this money, we'll build, right?
Yeah. And these companies are like, even GeneX, for example, based out of North Carolina, but that's not the parent company. Their parent company's in France or something.
Wow.
Right? But this is a global thing.
Yeah.
It's not just Grant County, it's
Right.
not just Indiana, it's not just the United States, it's global.
Well, that's like Conrad mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
you drive anywhere in this state, in a rural community, you see these signs all over, no solar ground on, or no solar on farm ground.
Yep.
Yeah. To me, I already get the vibe that you guys are like some bulldogs when somebody doesn't treat you fairly.
I'd say it's fair to say that we are the most aggressive of our group.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Like you're not going to sit there and let anybody do wrong by you. So, that being said, where did you start? Where did you start digging? Where did this come from?
FOIA is the Freedom of Information Act.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Yeah.
I knew that as a government entity, we had access to something. They would have to give us something. So I just started digging into FOIA. I think it was probably the night of the meeting, maybe the next day. My wife does an awesome job at research, and she'll research anything you give her. She helped me out, and we found that Indiana's version of FOIA is called the Access to Public Records Act. And it's as simple as a Microsoft Word document that you type up in an official capacity and submit to the county attorney. So we started with the executive director of the area plan, Ryan Malott. He was a driving force in this. He's referenced multiple times. You guys have seen the evidence. So we just started with that, and we started with a 24-month window, any communications he had with the commissioners about solar and any communications he had with the solar companies themselves. And we got that first batch back and kind of realized we need to go deeper. So we went back farther into 2021, basically is when he started.
Okay.
His position was in March. And then we realized we could do the same for the commissioners, and we did so. And that yielded, over 6,000 pages of documentation between the two. There was some filler stuff in there. There were a lot of attachments that they included, but there were
A lot of repeats.
Yeah, a lot of
Okay.
repeated documentation. When they put it together, none of it was in chronological order. So and this is where it starts to make your mind work, right? If we request documentation from your organization and you want to be as transparent as possible and you've done nothing wrong, you would probably try to please the request and put it in chronological order.
Right.
This wasn't. I mean,
Yeah.
we were scrambling, trying to connect emails and, yeah.
This here says solar Apex Solar Energy Equipment Supplier in Monticello, Indiana.
Well, if you look up Apex Clean Energy, they're out of Charlottesville, Virginia.
Okay.
And then Invenergy is another company that is coming in.
And Gen X Solar's out of North Texas.
Genex. So you go
Or Genex.
Genex.
Yeah.
And they're out
Okay.
of Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay. Yep.
They have an office in Indianapolis, but it is a rented office. I don't even think, if you pull it up on Google, I don't even think you can find the actual physical address.
Okay.
I just know that through conversations with their representatives.
So going back to the documents you pulled up, what was the first thing that popped out to you?
Oh, I'm going to go, I pulled up, so we have what we call the final evidence packets. It's the packets we put together. And for Mr. Malott, I printed out a packet for each member of the area plan and handed it to them. And on the top was his job description. I think the first thing that stuck out to us was his attitude throughout the whole thing. I can't think of the word to put to it, but he was working for the solar companies.
Okay.
That's not really his job, but the first thing that stuck out is that he held a lot of meetings with a lot of these companies, and they were kind of exclusive meetings, if that makes sense.
And not just meetings, but invited them
Yeah.
to come.
So the solar companies were there with?
Well, so they had a summit in March of 2022 where they pulled in, all the companies that wanted to do these projects, and it was at the time, of course, under COVID protocols. But
Right.
they had this thing down in Muncie where they brought in all of the members to kind of gauge their interest, get information, And what we found out eventually was the ordinance that Ryan Malott had written got the input from the solar companies on, they got their ideas, what they liked about the ordinance, what they didn't like, and then went back and made edits after the fact. So like in our evidence that Dallas requested, just tons of examples of him reaching out to solar companies reaching out to them and coming up with the best ordinance that the solar companies wanted.
Here's what I'll read to you. Excuse me. On March 20th of 2021, Tom Schoder of Invenergy reaches out to Ryan. He says, don't hesitate to reach out with questions as you start to dive into a solar ordinance. I'm happy to set up an in-person meeting in the future as well. Ryan's response was, I have your solar ordinance printed and in my to-do list. So we're taking direct feedback from the companies who stand to make millions of dollars
Right.
off of the farm ground in Grant County on how to build it to make it the easiest for them.
Just this popped into my mind. How do they approach the farmers to purchase their land?
With money, they went
I
door to
mean,
door.
they go door to door.
Yeah,
and so they've knocked on doors in your community. And,
There were letters that were sent out at first.
Okay.
So to give you a little bit of context, being a farmer myself, I can tell you, depending on where you're at in Grant County, if you were the farmer yourself or the landowner, like as a farmer, you can probably expect, depending on your program, maybe anywhere between $100 to $500 an acre profit, depending on your crop prices, that kind of stuff. We've seen proposals from the solar companies to landowners, farmers, anywhere between, I've heard $800 an acre all the way up to $1,500 is some of the more recent numbers we've heard. That's per year, like $800 to $1,500 an acre per year for the life of the contract, which is 30 years, plus the companies have right of first refusal, somewhere up to 5-10 years to extend the lease after that.
So they're driving a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I mean, right now, I mean, if you're only making $200-300 an acre,
Right.
$1,500 looks real good.
Yep.
Yeah. So
these companies are coming in offering this.
Yep. And they'll use lines like, hey, this offer isn't going to last. Your neighbors are going to eat this up. I know personally, I've heard a story where one farmer tried to offer up 500 acres. That's a pretty good deal. And they said, no, we want all or nothing. We want all your land or we're not coming in at all. And he gave them up. I mean, it's two 70-year-old brothers who just don't want to farm anymore. They didn't have anyone in their family that wanted to take over. So the deal sounded really, really good at the time. And I think as time progressed, they actually won out now. And the company refuses to sit down and let them out of their lease. So.
Okay, so they've signed the lease, but nothing's been approved yet, correct?
Correct. Yeah, nothing has been approved through the county.
So the county could step in, intervene.
They could, absolutely. But I think the only intervention is going to be a complete and total moratorium on solar, like we have on wind and CAFOs. So here you're talking, the CAFO thing was years ago. They put a moratorium on that. No CAFOs in Grant County.
Yeah.
The idea of wind came up, complete moratorium. Now the idea of solar comes in, and they're pushing this big money, and we're giving it thought. But for Steve Wright, we're giving it thought because he thinks we need a new jail. And the money we're going to bring in is going to go for that jail in Steve's mind. That's what it always reverts back to, is the jail.
Yeah, I've heard some rumblings about the new jail.
Let's backtrack just a second.
Okay.
Where we're at right now, yes, we do have a moratorium. I think there's 2.5 months left of the moratorium.
Until August, yep.
Which means county can't take any applications for it. The ordinance is passed.
Yes.
So if we get to the point where the APC starts accepting applications, it's a done deal. Like, we're gonna have solar. So yes, it is kind of a done deal. So right now, we're at a pausing point right now with the moratorium. So what, our biggest thing is to get to May 7th, to the elections, where Mark Bardsley and Steve Wright are running for re-election. So, we can dive deeper into that part later.
So now with the information that you have now, what was your plan of action as far as seeing if there were other people that were as upset by this as you were?
Well, and, in December, we had roughly 250 people show up to that APC meeting. And
In a 75-person capacity room.
yeah, so they filled the room, they filled the lobby, they were lined up outside the walls. So when you think about 250 rural citizens, that's a pretty good turnout. They have an email list that's bigger than 250, and it continues to grow. They have a Facebook page that continues to grow. I think they said we had 60,
We're over 700 people now.
60 new members after the forum they had on Tuesday. And so just outreach, talking to people as much as possible, raising awareness to the issue, because there may still be some people in the county that don't know
Right.
what's coming.
I think, I would say probably more than 95% of the people have no clue this is happening.
Oh, yeah.
Easy 95%,
Uh-huh.
probably more.
Well, I'm going to be real honest. I didn't put too much thought into it until you reached out. And it was like the minute we had the text, exchange, we're driving, I can't even remember. I think we're heading to Kokomo, and I'm seeing signs. And sometimes we like to take back ways home and, just enjoy the Indiana farmland.
Right.
And I was seeing them all over on the back way home. I was like, there's got to be more to this than meets the eye.
Right, it's a substantial threat.
So, I know we're gonna get to it, but one of the things I thought was, where's the energy going? Who's getting the money for the energy? What tax breaks are these companies getting? Everything started to make me think there's more to this than, like I said, meets the eye. So what were you seeing as far as?
I think these companies, GeneX is very vocal. I think we've seen GeneX at all of these meetings, and I've yet to meet a rep from Apex or Invenergy, but they are very confident in when they talk about what they can do for the community in terms of money back to the community. I know they're talking about going into Wells County, and they've already set up a scholarship through Southern Wells Schools to try to smooth it over. But the fact is, these companies will come in, GeneX, Apex, Invenergy, once they get the application approved by the county, they sell the contract. So everything they're telling you is kind of fluff.
Yep.
Just to get you to understand, once it's approved by the county, the contract gets sold to the highest bidder. Now,
So they're not upfront with that.
no,
they?
you have to provide that.
Right.
The question was asked, GeneX held a landowner exclusive dinner within the last month that Steve Wright was in attendance
At Obie's.
at Obie's. And the question was raised, hey, who are you going to sell these contracts to? And they kind of beat around the bush a little bit. And they said, we have some companies we work with. And they said, well, are these foreign companies? Are these foreign panels? And they said, we work with both American and foreign companies. But it all comes down to the highest bidder. And who do we know factually, look through the local news or federal news, who's pushing the agenda. You can put two and two together. They haven't come out and said it, but they've all but confirmed. We're going to sell these leases to foreign companies.
Yeah. And to answer your questions, who gets the electricity?
Right.
So the installations kind of follow the towers.
That main line they just
Going
put
this
in.
way right here.
Okay.
The high voltage lines. So they're going to be tied into the grid, and it'll go to whoever needs it the most. And there is
Really?
absolutely no guarantee that even a single Grant County
Is gonna
citizen
see it.
will see it.
Huh. That's,
So they build their little substations under the line, and then it just ties into that main line and zips down the line.
And how it's going to affect us. Yeah, we're probably not going to see any of that electricity. We're not going to see, lower electricity bills. We're not going to see that. What we are going to see is, since these companies come in promising, for example, GeneX has promised economic development money to the county. In order for them to promise that, they want tax abatements. And from what we understand, roughly 70-ish% of the installations going into Grant County will fall under Eastbrook school system. So as a farmer, as a landowner, our property taxes go to school systems. So what happens when those thousands of acres get a tax abatement? All that money gets taken away from the Eastbrook school system.
ooh. Wow.
And even if they,
What's the dollar amount on that loss?
I don't know if we've done the math.
a lot, I can tell you that as
It'll be a lot.
Oh, yeah.
as a taxpayer.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're not getting what they're used to getting, so, oh, yeah.
And I've been to some schools from farm counties. Those are the nicest schools.
Yeah.
Those are some of the nicest schools in the farming counties.
So, I know there's a lot of nuance in this, but just for example, I've owned farm roughly 150-ish acres, maybe about 125 acres. Property taxes are roughly $5,000 a year. So, you multiply that by 6,000, 5,000, 6,000 acres, that's a huge chunk of money.
Wow.
That's shocking.
That's something, people need to ask our commissioners, because they are not telling anybody anything. They are not telling us they won't tell us how much money the county will get. They're not telling us how much, tax incentives they're giving to the companies, or the amount of money in economic development. They won't give us a single figure for anything. So I don't know if it's a big secret or they truly don't know, but we can't get any information out of them. They flat out tell us they will not respond to emails. They will not tell us anything. They're just staying super quiet about every aspect.
But as an elected official, you're supposed to work for your constituents, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
I've been told by both Commissioner Bardsley and Commissioner Wright they will not respond to my emails anymore.
So how many county commissioners do we have?
3.
Okay.
There was Mark Bardsley, Steve Wright, and Ron Stewart. Ron Stewart was elected in the
Just- yeah.
2022
Okay.
election.
And there's 2 open spots this
Mark Bardsley and
upcoming.
Steve Wright are up for re-election.
Okay.
And I like to put this little dig in here. Steve Wright's not up for re-election because he was not elected last time. I like to add that little dig in. He was caucused in by the
Okay.
Republican Party.
Okay. Yeah.
so this is kind of serendipitous to how important this election is going to be.
Everything, you can't understate how important this is. It's imperative that, we get somebody else in it. It's either, Mark Bardsley and Steve Wright get reelected, we're getting solar. If we get Chuck Polling and Shane Middlesworth in, we're not. It's as simple as that.
I truly believe this election could change the landscape of Grant County. Because
And not just for solar, but for the jail too.
it could change the entire landscape.
And beyond, I'm thinking the future of our agricultural.
Absolutely.
Your future farmers, yeah.
I
Like
think
the next
someone
generation.
said, land's going for like $10,000 an acre right now.
More than that.
If you take thousands of acres out and flood them with solar panels, that's just going to go up. And young farmers that want to grow won't be able to.
You
they
can't,
just won't
no.
be able
Simple
to.
economics, supply and demand. The supply decreases, the demand stays the same, prices have to go up.
Yep.
Economics 101.
Well, and that's like, because I work at Weaver, so I'm through Van Buren every day, but Okay, Marion and Gas City are the bigger cities in the county, not much, there's not much farm ground around there, but everybody else in the county, I mean, every other county school
It's concerning.
is big agriculture.
And Weaver's trying to grow. So, here's another kicker for the Van Buren area. Weaver's trying to bring their world headquarters back to Van Buren, which will bring jobs back, it will bring housing back. And these companies are trying to surround Weaver with solar panels. You can't grow like
That's a $30-ish million project to bring that back
Yeah, and that's,
to a town that absolutely needs that
oh, yeah,
development.
definitely, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they need that. They need the citizens to grow there. They need to expand, because when you have a population that's growing, it only means better roads, better schools, better
structure within the community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you would think maybe some of those companies might have a dog in the fight as well.
We reached out early on to Weaver. By early, I mean late December, January timeframe, and we had some communications there. I don't know what the outcome was, but I know Van Buren as a town is working some stuff right now to protect themselves. We plan on taking it to the other townships in the county once it's approved and saying, listen, you guys are surely getting the same feedback that Van Buren was getting. This is how Van Buren's protecting themselves. Just take this, it's already been approved. Put your name on it, have your lawyer look it over and sign it, and it'll probably get approved too. It doesn't override the current ordinance, but it forces the sitting commissioners to look at it, and they have to make a choice. Are we gonna honor the request of these towns, or are we just gonna tell them to kick rocks and stick with what we got?
Yeah.
So that'll be telling too, you know. If Bardsley and Wright stay in office, there are some plans there. We're surely going to continue the pressure and the disruption. I don't think there's any intentions of stopping that until we succeed in what the mission is.
I do feel like, and this is the conspiracy theorist in me, I do feel like there's something else behind this. There's something else going on.
We have uncovered zero evidence of that.
Zero. Okay.
But that's with an asterisk, okay? These were only official @grantcounty.in.gov emails. There are references in the evidence I sent you guys to text messages and phone calls. Steve Wright and I had a conversation after the forum that he did, and he said, Dallas, I want to assure you, you're not going to find anything in those emails. And I said, I know, Steve, because I know you're smart enough to move to phone calls, text messages, and personal emails. And he kind of just chuckled and shook it off. But we're not dumb.
Yeah, why would a guy say that
Yeah.
if he had nothing to hide?
If you're not hiding something, that's like, because, I read every day, Bill Gates, look at all this farm ground he's buying up all across the country.
It
The
gets
world.
deep. I
So
don't
it's-
know. I know Steve Wright and GeneX Solar are very, very friendly.
Yep.
Very, very friendly. So I asked him, why did you go to the meeting? That was what my email was about. Why were you at that landowner exclusive dinner sitting beside Trina Rudabush of GeneX Solar? And his response to me was that he wanted to look out for the landowners and make sure they weren't getting any hard time from GeneX. So I said, okay, well, I know for a fact there's a family that wants out of their lease. Are you going to look out for them? And he beat around the bush, told me that was a lie. He called the family. Well, I found out he didn't call the family. He hasn't talked to the family in over a year. So what's in it for them? I don't know. Maybe their legacy of getting their new jail. Mark Bardsley's been in office for over 20 years. And if he has to hang his hat on a new jail, then what's he done for 20 years?
There's the other part of that where your mind wants to go, though, of like, why are they fighting so hard for this? Because it all goes back to the pocket, maybe? I mean, you have to think that's a possibility.
Right.
For how hard they're fighting for something that won't benefit them.
Right.
As commissioners.
That's,
Now I'm going to give you guys another angle because we haven't talked about draft 7 yet. So we got to backtrack a little bit. away from the commissioners and more towards solar. The APC, area plan, met with citizens of the county, and they put together what was called Draft 7.
This would have been September 2022.
Very citizen friendly in terms of setbacks and what these companies have to do
A lot of
to
protections.
protect the citizens of the county who are non-participating. That's what was pushed up to the commissioners. And when that goes to the commissioners,
As
they-
well as a very significant setback from property lines.
Okay, okay.
So when that goes up, the commissioners can approve, they can deny, or they can make amendments. And so they waited almost the full 90 days.
88 days.
They had 90 days, waited 88, and chose to amend the ordinance. But what they sent back after approval was something completely different. It was night and day. And so that's where the uprise came from. Because the area plan is responsible for the decisions of the land in the county. right?
Correct,
That's-
yes.
And that's why I asked the question about, how do you make your decisions when something's proposed? Well, you make those decisions based off of the input of the professionals that are designated to give that input, right?
Yeah.
And in this case, it just didn't happen. And so I think that's where a lot of the uprising came from. Hey, the APC gave you something that had the voice of the citizens that would be directly impacted. And you came back with almost the exact opposite. And so that's where the shady started to come into play. We're like, what are you guys doing? So that's when people started getting real upset.
Yeah, the draft 7 had a lot of citizen input. Draft 4, which the commissioners passed themselves, had zero, and I mean zero public involvement. It had everything to do with the solar companies. They're the ones who read it over. We've got emails from some of the, I think it was Apex. I think it was Apex that sent the commissioners an email saying, here's a proposed list of things we would like to see changed in the ordinance.
And probably all of them got put in there.
All their suggestions?
I would have to think so. How friendly, I don't know, particular
Right,
details,
but-
but as friendly as the commissioners are to solar, you'd have to think that every single one of those. And I'm sure there's some in there that were not relayed
Right.
through email, that was through phone calls or texts that we can't see, that we don't have access to.
Yeah, this is,
Apex Clean Energy made direct edits to draft number 3. Draft number 3 was given to them in Microsoft Word format, and they would put comments off to the side, little comment boxes. Change this for this, and say this instead of this. And it was all to help them.
So draft 7, which the APC passed and recommended to the commissioners, had a 1,320 foot setback, which is a quarter mile.
okay.
That's what the people wanted. And when I say the people wanted it, I really mean that's what the people wanted. It wasn't APC coming up with it. That was the actual, citizens'
Right.
response back. So when they came back with their draft 4, it took it down to 50 feet from property lines and 300 feet from any dwelling. Not barn or garage, but an actual house.
Residential,
Yes.
yeah. So they could put it right next to somebody's
Yeah,
big
right
barn.
next to it, yep. And that's just the solar panels, that's not the fence. So the
Right.
fence, at 50 feet, the fence will be right on your property line. They will get as close as they possibly can.
Huh.
Now, the solar companies like to come back and say, oh, well, yeah, that's true, but, we'll give you some beautification stuff. We'll plant trees and grasses and natural flowers, vegetation, that kind of stuff. And, the inverter is going to be away from the house because of the noise, and it's loud.
Really?
But, part of the...
How loud? Like,
I don't know, it's subjective how,
yeah.
climate and whatnot, how close and proximity to it, but I know the ordinance says it can't be more than 60 decibels at the property
Okay.
line. So they're gonna get where they need it to within the bounds of that
So you're
ordinance.
going to hear it.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
You're going to hear it pretty good.
some other counties, we've got we've seen video that people have taken driving by one of these things, and where they, there's no residence nearby, but you drive right up next to the inverter that's right up on the road, and oh my gosh, is it loud.
Does that run nonstop?
Well, it's, whenever it's generating power.
Yep.
Here, I'll tell you how far they're willing to go, the companies. I received, I actually started making shout outs. Anytime Trina was at the meeting, I'd make a point to point her out in the crowd, just so everyone involved knew who it was, a little poke the bear type action.
Yep.
There's a guy by the name of Roland Rosario, who's an executive of GNX Solar. The first time we saw him at a meeting was Tuesday, this forum they had at the fairgrounds. But I would call him out because he would join virtually, so you'd see his name up there. And so I don't remember if I invited him to call me or if he wanted me to call him, but we ended up on the phone. And he mentioned the fact that I have some drainage issues. On one side of my property is a field that belongs to my neighbor. The next is a ditch. So the water, when it rains, just runs from the field through my yard down to the ditch. He offered to fix that drainage issue while they were doing the project, while they were installing the project at no cost to me. He said, hey, you got a drainage issue? I'd love to fix it. And I truly believe it was so I would just shut my mouth and go away. Now, obviously, I turned it down. I'm not doing any deals with the devil here. And he's my devil currently.
Yeah.
But I just told him I couldn't walk out my door, see a yard that didn't have drainage issues, and always know that it came back to solar. And I hung up the phone that night. I finished the call with my wife sitting beside me. I said, I truly believe if I called and asked him for a pole barn, he would pay for it to be built as long as I shut my mouth. I mean, they're deep pockets. They'll do anything they have to do to get you
Pole
going.
barn.
Right.
That's nothing.
So he knew you had drainage issues. How? Did you ever see anybody out there checking it out, or is it?
I haven't, but again, working professionally, you work, 8 to 4.
Yeah,
And then
right.
one of your kids has practice. So
Yeah.
You don't
Ball
see a
game or-
house until 5:30 or 6 every night. They're out there during the day.
Yep.
They're not. They go out during the day when people are at work. They do what they got to do and take off.
Does anybody say anything to you about any issues on your properties that they'll take care of?
I haven't had the first correspondence with any of them.
Okay.
Surprisingly, like I've got farm ground. None of it is within the areas of where they're planning projects, which is surprising that they're sticking with specific areas right now. I'd have to think that they're going to, once they're invited in, once they have their foot in the door, they will be expanding. So I'm surprised I haven't gotten any invites yet.
Why Grant County? Why are they so interested in Grant County?
I think it's that line, that high power line. I think they're following everywhere that line was installed. They're just going county by county. Because Huntington County.
If it's a straight line, or you follow that line, are there other counties with?
Madison, like this line goes all the way through Gaston into.
Are they the same solar companies there though?
It's not just Grant County. It's like
Right.
Yeah.
We had people from at the meeting last week from Huntington.
Huntington just started their fight. Huntington County
So
did.
Madison and what's Muncie?
Delaware.
So it's not just us. It's
Right.
It's every county in Indiana.
Wow.
So no.
And it's the same companies, the same.
I don't know. I know that in Blackford County, GNX had a project just recently in Blackford County, and they sold that contract to a EDF Solutions, who works hand in hand with GNX. I don't know. I think EDF Solutions is the one that's also doing the one up in Huntington County, and that dips into Wells County just a little bit. So now Wells County's in the fight as well.
Because in my thought, I was like, there's a paper trail. So you could go back and check those counties where the solar's already there. And if it's the same companies, check the contracts that are they using the same people? Are they foreign? Or what's going on?
Yeah, see, I don't know. I mean, I know Wabash County had an ordinance. A solar company came in and wanted more, and they kind of redid the ordinance because the people started to stand up and say, hey, enough's enough. And they redid the ordinance. But as far as companies, I'm not real sure. I know GNX is heavily involved in our area, Grant County and the surrounding counties.
Yeah, and you can't see those contracts.
No.
They have a
and then they make them sign an NDA.
Non-disclosure.
Okay.
Plus, they have told us that, you know, it is Indiana, it's state law that they have to record the leases. And they straight up told us they're not recording. They've, you know, some
How
of
is
the
it
companies have
state law
recorded
and they're
some of
not?
them.
And they're not.
What's that?
How are they getting away with that?
Who's gonna police them?
Yeah.
The people who are, you know, are tasked to police them are the ones asking for solar.
Right.
And that kind of kicks back to a bigger issue. The state has its own solar mandates for counties to follow. Believe it or not, Grant County's draft 4 that they passed is more restrictive than what the state recommends. So now you've got pressure from the top down, and obviously the state's receiving federal money for being green energy friendly.
And state has teeth.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so the state probably, there's some grant money involved with these counties who are less restrictive with their ordinances as well. And so now we truly feel like we're getting no help from the state. We've reached out to every news channel in the state, got no feedback. As soon as the word solar comes in, they back off, you know, and it's complete silence. We don't get help from the Chronicle. That's kind of, I mean, we went to Ed Bounds, we've gone to Rashard Tyson, now we're here with you guys. We're not even getting help from the Chronicle.
Huh.
We've given them everything we have on a silver platter, and
Nothing.
they won't. If they do cover them, they'll go to the commissioners first
Right,
to
right.
get their input on it, and then call us a mob, which we have, and then run a story and make us look like the bad guys.
Well, I'll throw this out there, you know, I'm a conspiracy theorist, but these television stations, the newspapers, they're owned by corporate conglomerates, and you report what we want reported, you don't report what we don't report it, so this, I think stuff like this is gonna be you guys' best avenue,
Ted, I think you hit the nail on the head, man.
because, you know, you're not gonna get the help from,
Yeah,
Yeah.
the only reason we've gotten where we are at is just word of mouth.
yeah,
We
social media, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the way with the future. I mean, it's just,
Well,
there's
the internet is
15
incredible.
years, there's
It
not,
is.
15 years, there won't be a newspaper anywhere. Everything's gonna be online.
He's right. I talked to
know,
my
I
sister this
agree.
morning because my brother-in-law is an electrician, and I just think a lot of the skilled trades, farming, all that stuff, it's something that we need to implement more in our school systems, educate these kids about things like that. And I was like, hey, you know, I got this solar podcast. This is really interesting. I mean, there's something there. And I worry so much that we aren't going to drive through on a farm road, and, you know, on a beautiful summer day, and, you know, it's late July, and all there is corn and blue skies.
Yep.
It's not going to be that.
Yeah, take
And-
it in while you can.
Yeah, I mean, it I don't want to see that stuff. I've drove through counties where they have those huge wind turbines. That's kind of eerie to me.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
out by Oldwood is,
Oh, that's, yeah.
you know, during the daytime it's the wind turbines, nighttime it's the red blinking lights. I don't know how anyone finds that, you know, visually appealing.
No.
Because I'm like you guys. I want to drive through the country. I want to see corn or beans.
Yeah.
That's how I grew up. And that's what Indiana is to me.
Yeah.
I've lived all over the country. I mean, all over the country I've lived. And you just don't see stuff like you see here. And that's part of the reason why I moved home,
Yeah.
you know?
Urban sprawl is bad enough. You know, obviously I'm a farmer. I live out in the country,
Right.
so I like to be as far away as possible. But you know, people realize how bad living in town is, and everybody wants to come out to the county, and you know, those opportunities aren't going to be around much longer.
Nope.
Especially, you know, you lose 5,000-6,000 acres to solar. It's just going to make the situation even worse. You're not
Yep.
going to be able to escape the urban, you know,
Yeah,
kind of landscape. You could, you know, they'll probably start, you know, a lot of farmers will sell off tracts of land for subdivisions, that kind of stuff. So, you know, our open country is disappearing at a rapid rate.
Definitely, it is. It is, and that's sad, but.
But going back to the meat of it, so now that you've got all the public knowledge, or, you know, all that stuff, all the paperwork, how'd you guys, I know we talked about it earlier, how'd you guys delegate who was going to go through all this? Because there's a lot, right?
And this goes back to technology, you know. We scanned everything in, 6,000 pages. Scanned it all in. I put it in a Google Drive that was public, and we just shared it out. And I think at one point with the commissioner's batches, we had over 50 batches, pages of 100, and we just called them batches. So he volunteered to take.
I started at the end and worked my way forward.
He took batches 40 through 50. Another guy took 20 through 30. And we just split it up, and I created a Google Doc that's shareable between everybody, and we just put our notes in. And that's kind of how that final evidence packet was developed and established. Once we figured out, and you just labeled batch and page number with a little note, and when it was all done, I went through and found each reference, and I printed it out, labeled it with the number, scanned it back in, and that's how we got our final evidence that you guys saw.
Wow.
But again, that's public, so if anybody
Right,
wants
yeah.
a copy, you know,
You can get
let
it.
us know, I'll give it to you.
There you go.
We are very, very open, and that's, you know, Conrad, I told you, we're not gonna tell you anything we don't have evidence of.
Right.
And I feel confident in that, and I will do the same with the public when we talk about, I won't tell you something unless I have evidence of it.
So, going back to that, where you said, you know, people could reach out to you guys, what's the best way for them to get you guys on the Facebook page or?
Yeah, Facebook page is the easiest right now. It is Grant County Citizens for Responsible Solar. We do have a website. It is nosolaronfarmground.com. So if you see the big yellow signs throughout the entire county, it says no solar.
Okay.
So that's why we got that domain. But that links it back to the Facebook. There's ways of donating to the cause.
Okay.
And then we've got like blog posts on there from time to time. Like for example, the Malott pages, the commissioner pages. We have linked to that on our website, so you can get on there and see those things without having to reach out to us.
Yep.
Well, I think that, you know, me and Ted, we're pretty in depth with this. We'll add that link to the YouTube video so people can,
Absolutely.
you know, I just want you guys to know this is so crazy to me how this is transpiring. It's almost like it's almost like watching Aaron Brockovich. Like this movie is like unfolding with layers of different. I can't even think of the word.
We've only scratched the
It's
surface.
like
Yep. And that's,
plot twists. There's plot twists.
You want to add even more stuff? I don't think I sent this. Yeah, I did. I emailed this to you when I sent out my original email. But
I read it.
can I read it now?
Yeah.
You want me to read
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
I did modify it just for general broadcasting.
Okay.
So I spoke up. This was me, but like I said, I modified this for more of a public disbursement. So I titled, what are the commissioners up to? On Monday, April 1st, a citizen, me, spoke during the public comment portion of the commissioners meeting. The topic was about taking campaign contributions from contractors. A joint Bardsley Wright campaign flyer was mailed on Friday, March 29th, with a return address of P.O. Box 167 Marion, which comes back to local contractor J.G. Bowers. The citizen, me, asked the commissioners about hiring JGB for a job and was given the runaround on whether that was true or not and was never given an actual answer. The citizen was approached by Bob Jackson, who was the emergency management guy. After the meeting, was told that he was indeed correct, that J.G. Bowers had performed that same work that I had asked about. Several hours later, myself and a whole bunch of other people received one of those mass campaign text messages accusing commissioner candidate, local county council member, and local contractor Chuck Pulling of, quote, getting rich off your hard-earned tax dollars. The timing of that message was obviously suspicious, right? Mm-hmm. So I had literally just talked about that just a few hours before. The image in the text shows Chuck's equipment in front of the jail making repairs. What we know is Chuck was hired by the commissioners for those exact same repairs. And we have actually reached out the APRA request to get to find out who it was that took the picture from the parking lot, and we've been given the runaround on that also.
They said the commissioners have to review everything, and my response was that it's a video. I asked for video footage of very specific areas outside the county building. That should be an IT issue. I don't know any of the commissioners that are tech savvy enough to review the footage and give it to me. I was told May 19th, so after the election.
Right,
is when
right.
we're going to find out.
So, like I said, Chuck was hired by the commissioners to perform these repairs. So it's, open question. Steve and Mark, if they're afraid of Chuck getting rich from taxpayer money, why are they hiring him? That's a good question, right?
No.
I mean, it makes sense. So, and then back to the JGB topic, you gotta wonder why a campaign mailer would be sent out by, at the very least, an address of a local contractor regularly employed by the county and the commissioners themselves. Do they not also deserve the same treatment as Chuck? Why would a contractor regularly hired by two commissioners currently running for re-election be paying for the campaign materials of those two same commissioners? Could it be in repayment for the use of taxpayer money for the hiring of their services and preferential treatment in future projects? You'll also notice some of the large campaign billboards throughout the county paid for by J.G. Bowers, advocating for their vote, of course. So if the commissioners are worried about local companies getting rich off of taxpayer money, maybe Steve and Mark would like to explain why Mark authorized the spending of $40,000 of taxpayer money for, quote, COVID-19 awareness on March 11th, 2021, with Steve Wright and Wright Promotions. Isn't it also interesting that that same local businessman, Steve Wright, soon later was caucused in to become a county commissioner and is running for election today? When citizens searched public records for the advertisements taxpayers paid for, very few were found to have been placed. Most of that money is still accounted for. And I attached my documentation. We actually got the contract from Mark to Steve for that. You should ask Mark and Steve if these situations are not the same with Chuck. Should we not look at Steve and his businesses under the same microscope as they are with Chuck and his? These are obviously, dirty election tactics, and they know what they're doing.
Right.
And so I ended up with just saying, think twice before voting for Mark and Steve. They both had plenty of time to help Grant County, yet the problems we're facing today come under their watch. Career politicians aren't just creating problems in Washington, they're right here and in our own communities as well.
Yep.
Mark Bardsley's a snake, gentlemen.
Is he?
I'll be completely honest.
Yeah,
I talked to him Tuesday. The Chronicle Tribune did the debate. Awesomely run debate. No input from the crowd. No questions from the crowd. They were all questions filtered from the Chronicle, who hosted it. Great, grand. So I did. I approached Mark Bardsley afterwards. I said, "Hey, do you have any input on the text message that went out about Chuck? Obviously, from your campaign."
Mark and Chuck are running under the same district, so they're competing against each other.
Okay.
And he said no. He had no idea it was going out. I said, "Okay, well, when we uncover the evidence that you did know what was going on, what's your reaction going to be?" And I was recording it on my phone, obviously, and he said, "It's really hard to have a discreet conversation when you have that device in your hand." I said, I'm recording this conversation. You're right. I just want to know what your reaction's going to be." And he started to pull my mom and dad into the conversation. My mom's worked at the county building for most of my life, so she's familiar with everybody there. And my dad was heavily involved in the fight against CAFOs. So he pulled the two of them into the conversation to try to change gears a little bit. And it's just odd to me that Bardsley is the chaplain for the Marion City Police Department. So I'm not much of a religious guy, but I know enough to know that if you're going to be religious as a profession, you should probably live it every day.
Honesty.
And to me, it's just not a good look for you to do stuff like that.
Yep.
And then turn around and console, a grieving officer through a traumatic event. It's kind of two-faced, double-edged sword, if you would.
Agreed.
Yeah, he's the quiet one. He won't even hardly look at you when you're up there talking as a taxpayer, as a citizen of the county. Steve Wright will just sit there and give you a shit-eating grin, and he'll talk to you, but it is a line of crap. I mean, he's got the politician talk down pat. He knows how to pad everything to make it sound just the way you want it to hear, without actually saying anything at all.
Well, we admire you guys that you guys are putting up this fight, and
Yes.
we like the underdogs, we like the fighters, and it's
We've realized this is kind of our burn the ships moment. Help's not coming.
yeah,
Again, I have zero interest in a political future. So
Right.
when I stand at a podium and say I'm coming for everybody who refuses to help this government run the way the fathers intended, I mean every word. And I don't think we're in the mood to stop.
And we've got our work cut out for us because every local government's the same, but Grant County, I've been told by multiple attorneys, separate attorneys, Grant County is the most corrupt county in the state of Indiana.
really.
So the Good Old Boys Club, they've all got each other's back.
Yep.
Just like, why would you think J.G. Bowers, Phil Bowers of J.G. Bowers, why is he giving campaign contributions, sending out flyers, material, billboards, that kind of stuff for the commissioners? They're all in the same club, man. We're not in it.
The Good Old Boys Club is fighting to stay in power. They really are.
And we are a threat, and that's why we've gotten the pushback that we've gotten, because clearly we are I say we, but we as the No Solar group, we are a threat to their reelection. And I like to make this comment, had they not so welcome, they didn't invite solar with open arms.
Right.
None of us would know. Man, this gravy train could have kept on chugging right along, and they could have stayed in power for decades to come. But we are determined to stop that train.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Hey,
awesome.
before we sign off, I want to give an analogy, if you will, because I know there are some people who live in the cities or in towns that kind of, they hear the word solar and they say, solar, I'm not worried about it, right? So we're sitting at a house right now. I want you to think about the neighbor directly connected. And you go outside one morning and they're building a stage. And you say, hey, what are you doing? And they say, I'm going to build a stage and I'm going to hold concerts every other night because I want to make some more money. You're going to come up for air, or a neighbor's going to come up for air. They're eventually going to go to the city, and the city's going to come out and shut it down and base, noise ordinances, building codes, X, Y, and Z, and it's not going to happen. Why am I, as a rural citizen, a non-participating neighbor to a solar project, not afforded the same rights as the citizens of the city? That job falls onto the county, right? The county is supposed to protect me, and that goes back to my thought process from the very beginning. My government's got my back, and they didn't, and I'm fired up about it.
Yep.
But that's an analogy I like to use for anyone living in the city who might not be able to make that connection.
I like that. That's a very good analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if I could say one more thing too,
Yeah,
like I said, we barely scratched the surface. We could probably do a couple more hours of this, and I think we should do a part 2 or even maybe part 3. But kind of a cliffhanger for the next one though. We didn't touch on the jail at all, and with the jail, House Bill 1121, which increases everybody's tax rate by more than double, well, 150%.
Oh my.
So if you want to look into that, House Bill 1121, it specifically calls out Grant County for your taxes to increase.
And then look at House Bill 1120 that takes that decision out of the county council's hands and puts it into the hand of the tax council.
Yeah, we can do an entire another episode just on that. So
Say 1120 and 1121?
yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So even if you live in town, you don't think you're going to be affected by solar panels.
Yeah.
You are affected because your taxes are going to increase. It's not if, it is going to happen. It's already been passed. It is law now. And,
It's how much, not if.
Yeah, so they want their jail. They got their backs up against the wall. They got to pay for it somehow. Regardless if we get solar or not, you're getting taxed.
Yep,
So
Keep
Okay.
burning the ships, man.
yep.
we got plenty of fuel.
Eliminate all options except moving forward. Keep
Yeah,
burning them.
That's the game plan.
Perfect.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. You're coming back, right?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. We appreciate you guys.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah,
Thanks,
for having
guys.
us on.
Yep.
Hey, okay, I love it.